I want your calls on this. Is it okay for eco-protesters to target war memorials? 0207 862 2222 is the number. Tell us what you think. The Just Stop Oil group have sprayed orange paint on London's Wellington Arch. Smoke flares were set off and campaigners used fire extinguishers to spray the paint as part of a protest against new fossil fuel licences. The monument is 200 years old and is a Grade I listed building. It was originally built as an entrance to Buckingham Palace, but later became a victory arch to signify Wellington's defeat of Napoleon. 3 people have since been arrested after the incident. Christo, what do you think of this? Is targeting war memorials a good idea from Just Stop Oil?
Well, you mentioned my dodgy joke. I think Just Stop Oil are becoming the dodgy joke, to be honest, because right, what do you mean by targeted? Protesting around a war memorial? Absolutely fine. Vandalising and damaging a war memorial, especially when you consider the emotions around war memorials, I think is wrong. It's stupid. It defeats the object. It actually turns people away from the cause. There's a reason why the person, Dale Vince, who was funding Just Stop Oil, has now said that he's going to stop because he believes that it's actually turning people against the cause. I believe that they have made their point so many times. We're all sick to death of it. I also don't believe that Just Stop Oil are actually honest about what their outcomes are supposed to be, because they say that they want it to be about just stopping oil, but it's actually about going far, far further about restricting our lives that they actually want. And so I don't support them doing this. I support protest, but not this type.
Yasmin, are Just Stop Oil becoming a joke, like Christo said?
No, I don't think so. Look, you know, I've heard the arguments of, oh, people can't get to work, ambulances got... This has not stopped anybody doing anything. You've got to do some eye-catching stuff if you believe in your cause. And for God's sake, women would never have got the vote if suffragettes behaved like ladies and did only nice things or nice protests. Sometimes you have to do this, and it's only paint, it'll come off. Having said that, one thing is very clear to me, that we're not talking about how what they're talking about and the threat to the planet is being totally ignored by our government, who's just opened up more natural oil resources. They're not listening. Nobody's listening. And so what do? What do they do?
They acknowledge that we don't yet have the technology for a sustainable way of using renewables to power the grid, number one. They listen to actually Tony Blair, and I never thought I'd say that he was talking sense, but a few months ago he made a really great point about the fact that bringing in restrictions, archaic taxes and the like on the British people when the amount of carbon that we produce is so low is so ridiculous, and that actually we should be using our technology and our finances to help other countries get further on with reducing their carbon.
We'll definitely come back on that, because I think that's quite a contentious
Absolutely.
point there. But let's speak to Grahame Buss now from Just Stop Oil. So, Grahame, why did you target the Wellington Arch?
For exactly the reasons that have already been described by Jasmine, for example. Ada, you're part of the Climate Crisis Advisory Group, chaired by Sir David King. You know why we're doing this. Yeah. Look, the paint will wash off. The paint will wash off. If you're in Chesterfield, where we've had these terrible floods, it's not quite the same. That won't just wash off. Your house, if people in Chesterfield, you had sewage coming up through the toilets, flooding their house, stinking their house out, destroying their carpets, destroying their furniture. That doesn't wash off. And those houses, they are uninsurable for flooding. So those people, there was a lady there who's saying that she just bought a sofa. It's going to cost her 3 years to pay it off, and it's been destroyed, and she can't afford another one. That's the consequences of climate change, not some paint which we can wash off with a jet wash in a couple of hours. Come on, we've got to get real on this. Our government is absolutely failing us.
Grahame, I totally get what you're saying. But we're going to throw over to some callers, and hopefully you can join in and share your opinions. We've got Chris from Manchester. Chris, what are your thoughts on the Just Stop Oil protests?
Well, it's become political. If the laws in this country now are so unenforceable by probably from government dictating down to police forces. I mean, possession. I live in a place where I could walk out now and find 3 or 4 lads smoking weed on the corner. Nobody's going to challenge them. This used to be called vandalism. And that used to be an offence, criminal damage. But, Graham, what I will say to you is this. My mum is 95, lives in a nursing home. She's from a Welsh mining village. Her uncle fought in the Second World War and was a rear gunner in Lancaster Bombers and was shot down twice. I've got his logbook. He would turn in his grave if he saw what you and your people are doing to deface the memorials to people who lost their lives in wars. How do you answer that?
Graham.
I think it's actually a memorial arch, isn't it, to war? I mean, the war that was fought there was one that we felt was a glorious war, of that particular memorial arch. Look, I think that what he would turn in his grave about is the future of his great-grandchildren. My dad also fought in the war. Lots of people fought in the war. We don't like wars, do we? And we're going to see an awful lot more wars because the climate crisis will bring wars, because it will bring the destruction of resources and people fight over resources. We're going to see wars. The way we avoid this is no new oil and gas. And that's a very simple demand. And the Climate Crisis Advisory Group supports that position.
Thank you.
Andy is part of.
Thank you, Graham. We've got one. Thank you, Chris, for that. John from West Yorkshire next. John, good morning. Are memorials off limits when it comes to protest?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've just been watching a programme this morning about the old fellow who fought in World War II, the Navy man, and I don't know how he must feel about this, that he put his life on the line for this country and for these people. I don't even know what they do with themselves all day long. So I work constantly, and they're going around defacing war memorials. It's disrespectful to the dead and the people who fought for this country and other nations as well. I think they're appalling, and they've certainly lost my consent and my support. Absolutely, I'm sure there's people down the country, thousands leaving the support.
Isn't there a bigger picture? Isn't the world really in a crisis at the moment? You know, we've got permafrost melting in the North Pole. We've got the Thwaites glacier that's melting. We are in dire trouble. And I think if we don't do anything about this, you know, a war memorial being spray painted will be nothing compared to the consequences we could reap.
I'm not against finding alternative methods of fuel, etc. But this is just disrespectful to people that have fought for this country. I'm not against, the eco-protesters in terms of protesting. It's the way you're doing it.
Graham, it's the way you're doing it. For John saying that he is against.
It is absolutely not disrespecting people who fought in wars and died in wars. Absolutely not. This is about preventing future wars and protecting our children. Come on, we have to recognise how serious this is. We have to stop new oil and gas licenses. I would beseech you, if you're watching this programme, join Just Stop Oil. Go to juststopoil.org. Join us. Let's make a difference that will limit the amount of damage we're going to see in the future, that will give us a survivable future. Come on.
Isn't it interesting that people are defending a memorial when the planet is dying?
Well,
I mean, where is the balance?
Perhaps more people would defend it if Just Stop Oil were actually honest about their goals, because it isn't just about stopping oil, it's about not going on holiday abroad anymore. It's about sharing essential resources like vacuum cleaners and camping kits and DIY tools. It's about sharing clothes, books, electronics and furniture in circulation. It's about all of those sorts of things.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I quite like going away to see my family, thanks very much.
But we all have to stop. So do I.
No, we don't.
Sharing a lawnmower is a...
Okay,
if Just Stop Oil were honest about that being their goal.
Yasmin, we just want to take one more caller here. Bev in Cornwall, good morning. Your thoughts on Just Stop Oil's tactics?
Absolutely despicable, disgusting.
Why? What should they be doing? Because we all agree there is an emergency out there, and what the world faces is pretty dire. So how can they get your attention? How can they get you on side?
They've got no respect for people that have given their lives, and are still dying. I am disabled and I support the Royal British Legion and the Poppy Appeal every year, and I also wear my poppies 365 days a year. And it is something very, very passionate to me, because I had people that have been injured in Afghanistan, the Falklands, and I know people that are suffering with mental health and problems as well. And these people have got no respect or whatsoever. And it just makes me so mad.
Grahame, what would you say to Bev? Because you do need to go on a charm offensive and get people on side.
There are people dying now in other parts of the world from climate wars. If Sudan is a climate war, and we're going to see wars resulting from the climate crisis if we don't address it. And those wars will result in people dying. I have refugees staying in my house who have come to this country because of wars. They don't want to be here, they want to be at home. They want to be with their mothers. We had a young man who came to our house. The first thing he did when he came to our house was to ring his mother up so she knew he was safe. Now, come on. It isn't just people in this country who deserve respect and who deserve to have a safe home life, is it? It's not just people here. We have to think about other people too. And we also have to think about our children who are going to see terrible changes to their lives if we don't act now, and our government is not acting now. They are complicit in the deaths of millions by licensing new oil and gas fields.
Grahame, but memorials are what people use to remember their dead, and some would say you're taking that away from them, that opportunity to remember them.
Of course we're not. Look, you can wash the paint off. The paint will come off. We are not disrespecting the dead of this country who died fighting for this country. Absolutely not. That's honestly, that is ridiculous. And actually, that memorial, as I say, is a triumphal arch. It wasn't built to represent the dead of our country. It was supposed to be a gateway to the Buckingham Palace. Yeah. Come on, we're not just defacing gravestones in churchyards, are we? And let's think about those people in Chesterfield whose homes have been destroyed, who said, "We have been abandoned by our government." That's a direct quote from someone living in Chesterfield who had sewage shooting up through her toilet, flooding the ground floor of her house. That doesn't wash off, does it?
Yeah, Grahame, thank you very much for that, and thank you for all your calls on this. Now, later, Storm will be